Most other states in the country, Virginia is seeing volumes of COVID cases and hospitalization. And with the vaccine approval expected soon, the state is set to receive nearly 9 million doses by the end of this month. What's going to happen? The state is also in position. Thank you very much for being with us again. So tell us, how is Virginia doing with regard to
we are seeing upward trends of our number of positivity rate, which we follow closely, is now over 10%. There are some areas of Virginia where it's even higher than that, especially in our southwest. We took some aggressive actions prior to Thanksgiving.
Hello, Paul, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Oh, hold on. There you go. I can hear you. Can you hear me? No, you're muted.
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Hi, Paul. Are you, who are
Can't
you
hear
talking?
you yet.
Paul, can you hear Deb?
I can hear Deb.
Perfect.
That's
Thank
better.
you.
I'm not a member of the committee. I'm just Joe Q plug public sitting in because it's a open meeting.
Okay.
So I will turn my sound off and video if you like, just to get out of the way.
Sure. Yep. Sound would be good. Video is not required, but it's up to you.
There, that's me, Friedenberg.
Who would be iPhone?
Paul, do you see that it's me, Deb Polowitz? Do you see me logged in? I put
I
my
can see
name
you
on
logged
there.
in. Yep, I
Okay.
see you. There's
Okay.
someone that says their name is iPhone, so I just want to identify that person so I could mark him down,
Okay.
him or her.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
can you hear me? Paul, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm on the phone with one of the, with Clay, is it Sitch, right? Yep. Just trying. For those on the computer here, I'm just helping Clay get.
He's the only guy there.
Hi,
You are on mute. See
Mm,
the little thing down there?
how do I unmute myself?
I don't know, it's a phone. Right here, see that? I just hit the screen.
Hmm.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm just trying to show him how to use my phone. I'm gonna go on my laptop in a minute. So
Great.
they can hear you. Start video. So we're gonna hit the mute.
So you're the Paul, huh? He's talking.
I'm on, yeah, I'm the Paul.
That's not a problem. Take care of business.
Yep.
You don't look like a Grace Flanagan.
You know, that's because my daughter had got logged in, and so I'm messed up in Zoom from all the distance learning.
Ah, okay.
But name's Greg, so at least the first initial's good. But yeah, you're right. I've surprised a few coworkers by dialing in. Looks a little funny, but yeah. Somehow I gotta get to the source of that, correct it.
Well, that's okay. My
Greg,
email
what-
is Laurie McShane, so I have the same issue.
Greg,
Yeah.
what's your last name, Greg?
Flanagan.
Oh, it is FL. I can see it actually.
Yeah,
Flan.
Flanagan. Yep.
And it's is it GREG?
Yes, sir.
All right, your name has changed.
There you go. I am who I am.
Any tie to Audra?
Hey, Paul,
Yes.
this is Lynn Seversal. I'm waiting for you to join me into the meeting.
Oh, here we go. I'll get there's a bunch of people.
Okay, thanks.
There we go.
All right.
All right, I gotta answer this. I gotta drop you, Clay. Call back if you need it. I have someone else calling for this.
She's my
Hello?
phone's louder than my laptop.
Yeah, say we're trying to get into the meeting.
What's the volume on this thing? Is that helping? I have no idea.
Hey, Paul,
Yes,
I don't know if you can change my name from Laurie to Mark.
I can.
You can. You're a talented person.
MARK,
Yes.
your change.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, Mark, you can do that yourself. If you go up into the upper right-hand part of your picture with the three dots, you can mute, unmute, and change your name.
Or at the bottom.
We got more people to admit. Hold on. Who is iPad?
Jeff Monsis.
Sorry, what was that?
Jeff Monsis.
Could you spell your last name for me, please?
Monsaas.
All right, thank you.
Barbin Jeff.
Okay.
Paul, this is Bonnie Anderson. I was wondering, I don't seem to have those three dots or whatever. Could you change our screen to Bruce and Bonnie Anderson?
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See, Clay made it on.
I'm here.
And you did say Ann was with you, correct?
Correct.
I'm here.
And then, see, Matt's there now. Go. I know there was one person that called, I can't recall the name, that was downloading the Zoom app on their phone, so they should be joining. So I'm just gonna go over this to make sure that I didn't miss anybody. Here's what I don't have. Please let me know if I missed you. That is on the meeting. Mike Anderson, Chris Older, is it Ole Olson? Kevin Risch, Deborah Roach, Kathy Stingle. Is Dan on too, Lynn? Oh, there he is. I see him.
I'm here.
Yeah. Yep, I see you. Richard, is it Wennis? And then Darren Wixel. Those are the other ones that I don't see.
Deborah is on, yeah.
Yeah, I'm on. Deborah?
Which one? Sorry. Deborah Roach. Okay.
Yep.
There you go. Gotcha. And then Kevin is coming in right now. Kevin Risch.
Are you giving us a virtual tour, Patty?
Yeah, I had to make my tea, so now I'm all ready.
Kevin is joining, it looks like, but it doesn't. There he goes. I think he's in now. There he is. Okay, so now the only ones I don't have, that I have missing from the list, are Mike Anderson, Chris Older, Ole Olson, and somebody's calling, so I'm going to go on mute for a second. Probably trying to get in.
We're not in the meeting yet.
They can still hear you.
Good, I'm making coffee. Wen says you guys can hear me make coffee. That's great. Cool.
We have a cup?
Yeah, you know, if this COVID thing didn't happen, we could all have coffee. Back in the old days at the town board meetings, they used to provide donuts and coffee for everybody.
Maybe next year, hopefully.
Right. That's what I was kind of hoping.
All right, Mike Anderson's going to try to dial in because his phone was full and he couldn't download the app. So he's going to try to call in and then figure it out later. But he has to dial like 27,000 numbers to get in from a dialing perspective. So that's why it's always better to have the app. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Paul, the Paul, apparently that's what I've been called by this group. I'm here to just facilitate this Zoom meeting, mute anybody that's not in the group on the committee, and then just try to make sure we, almost like a traffic cop. So that's basically my role. I don't live in Friedenberg, so I have no horse in the game. So, and I have to get on this call again because somebody needs help. So have fun.
While we're waiting for everybody, has everybody been getting the emails? We're just trying to correspond. You know, this is COVID, so hard. Is anyone having a problem with the emails or anything else? Good. All right.
Stop. Lucy, stop. Chirp, chirp.
See your name and okay, cozy.
I just want to make sure that was Mike Anderson that just joined by phone.
Yes, that is me. Yes, this is Mike Anderson.
Okay, we got you down.
Does
Sounds
anybody want to get started?
Doesn't Oli sometimes work late?
Very much so. I think if anything, he was hoping to call in and listen. If he was driving, he couldn't talk or anything. So that might be the best we get from Oli right now if he has a late night driving. So maybe he's that iPad that's not, that's just listening, and I don't know. So I got my phone and I haven't heard from him yet. So, but he did say sometimes he won't make it because of his work schedule.
Yeah, it seems like we should go ahead. I mean, we got a lot of ground to cover, right?
We do. Deb, do you want to give a welcome?
Huh?
Oh,
Or Deb Polowitz, good.
Either Debs. We got two great Debs.
Let Deb Polowitz do it.
well, thank you, everybody, for volunteering for this committee. It's a pretty big undertaking, and I appreciate everybody doing this big commitment. It's pretty difficult to get this job done, and thank you very much for everything. And thanks, Paul, for your services. We really appreciate it. I just want to remind everybody that Paul is recording everything. Everything that is being said in this meeting will be recorded for further review if we need to in the future. So just keep that in mind.
I'll just give an opening. This is Clay Sitch, and I'll just give an opening statement. It took us a long time to get here, but we're here now, and hopefully through all of our cooperations, we can put together an ordinance or not an ordinance or something to accommodate the town and make sure that we can move forward in an orderly fashion. And as I see it, that I know that there's two other folks here that want to have some sort of extraction pit someplace in the township. And I know that myself personally, as I've reviewed most things, I don't see any problem with those because they seem to be somewhat remote. But the one that managed to find its way into the middle of an existing neighborhood of quiet and peace is the one that actually triggered anything. So I don't think we'd even be here if it hadn't been for that. So hopefully we can get through this and get something done that works well for everybody. And thank you.
What does everybody think about having when we have like comments and things, running it kind of like the town board meetings, like 3-minute limits on, what you have to say? Does that seem fair? I don't know. What does everybody think?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah, there should be some limit. I can't do audio and Dan's.
Hello?
I can do audio with you because it just echoes.
Oh, okay. I'll shut my microphone off and I'll turn it on when I need to then.
So this is probably more of an organizational meeting with the distribution of individual information that's been compiled or will be compiled. So I guess we have to talk about our organization to begin with.
Right. Clay, I concur. I had sent something. There had been, as Melissa had indicated, kind of a jump start on the call with people sending information, which is helpful to make sure all of us have access to the same information to review and base our discussions on. And I know what Melissa had, has had it posted through the township, and then there've been some others that come in after the fact. So as people should have seen, because I sent out a version myself of looking at, much like Clay said, probably a little bit of review of what we have as a basis of what we're intending to do, make sure we're on the same page there, and then there does need to be a decision about a chair and a secretary, because I would envision beyond this introductory call that the calls from this point forward would have some agenda with different people doing some level of legwork, or at least focusing our discussions to be most efficient as possible. So one suggestion would be to either people speak to air what they have as questions or comments, or another could be to look through the basis of what we're acting on, which is really that application for service. And with both Clay and Deb on, we have the continuity of 2 township supervisors to hopefully provide a clarity of, again, purpose. And in my mind, we're looking to get somewhere, make sure we have the same end destination in mind and the process to get there.
I think you got Kennedy and Graven sent a letter, a memorandum, and the first thing they suggested being done is select a chairperson as secretary. And I think that that's very important, because after that point, the secretary will be keeping all the comments as well as the recording, I guess. So I guess maybe you have to follow what they said.
Makes sense.
Yep, that's our goal, is to follow along and make sure we get all of our check marks in the right place. So that being said, anybody out there interested in accepting either of those positions? Anybody want to step up to the plate?
Well, as you guys, most of you guys know me or have seen my emails at least. I've been involved. I work for the 148th Fighter Wing, so kind of this is what I do for a living. As a guard member, I stay at home with my kids. Otherwise, but I wouldn't mind volunteering that. I really have a strong belief in making sure that everyone is treated fairly and equal, and documents are kind of what I do. I do make mistakes, but I wouldn't mind taking on that job. Just throwing that out there. So.
Which job, Melissa?
Oh, secretary. Secretary.
Thank you, Melissa.
This is Greg. I don't mind being considered for chair, but again, it's just because we have to have somebody in that role. I'm open to others that might have a strong feeling, or as you can tell from what I wrote up, if somebody might perceive that we need to get names and have somewhat of a committee voting of sorts to come to that conclusion. So I'll throw my name out there as willing to take it on, depending on who else might be better positioned to do it. So open to others as well.
Thank you, Greg.
I'll second Greg's thing. He threw this agenda together. He seems to be a lot more committed than I am to this at this moment. So I was pretty impressed by getting something washed out there right away.
I don't know.
There's enough of us to vote him off if we don't like him later.
I know Greg well, and I support Greg in this role.
That'll make 4 of us.
I've worked with Greg for 15 or 20 years. Yeah. I absolutely have no problem with that as well.
I concur. Mm-hmm.
I have no hesitation in Greg running a very, very efficient, fair meeting.
Nor do I.
Okay, to move it forward, I'll make a motion to support Greg, unless anybody else is interested in participating in a vote. I move that we select Greg as chair.
Okay, so I speak if I'm in the internet.
Aye.
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 And then somebody how about for Melissa then for secretary? Do you want to have a motion for that then as well?
I make a motion that we select Melissa as secretary.
I second that.
Mr. Chair, call for the vote.
Call for the vote, yeah.
Everybody raise
All
your
in
hand.
favor?
Aye.
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 Congratulations to the 2 of you.
More
Or is
work.
that, or is it condolences?
Thank you.
You're a little person.
Wake now. Now.
Well, with that, I guess I'll go ahead and jump in. Again, I think this is intended to be, a pretty exploratory call, first call. So I wouldn't, I'm not surprised if we end up having people interject or need to interject comments or questions along the way. So not a hard driving agenda, but I do want to go back to where I started with the comment. And I know both Deb and Clay did make a couple of brief introductions, but we have seen a lot of information already. At least it's been made available. We may not have digested it yet, but it's a starting point. And I did want to check again, if you did see what I sent out, I was drawing from what I saw as the most recent literature, and that was the application we all signed that had the basis of, or at least the initial basis of what we're looking to accomplish here. So maybe before I just run that a bit as far as trying to facilitate conversation, is there any other broad ideas or concerns that people want to bring up right up front to make sure to touch on them before we close out the call later this evening?
As I understand it, there's a moratorium that Friedenberg set for the St. Louis County. Do we have a time frame on that? I would think that this meeting and would be tied to that to get it done in time. Does it have a deadline when it expires?
End of March. End of March.
Yep, April 1st is when it's done. So we have to have it done well before that.
That's a good point. It kind of relates to the 1B, and that is there is going to be a timetable, as I understand it. I appreciate you asking that because it is good to bookend it. And then there had been the reference made on the application about Monday and Thursdays. So apparently the pace was 2 times a week, which seems like a pretty quick pace. But again, I guess the end of March is a deadline of sorts. And we have the holidays, which is kind of a nit, but I think I'd follow up with Melissa and just look at how many of these dates, and maybe also with Paul, but how many of these dates are actually viable so that we don't infringe on the holidays. So I could see a deliverable back with just a basic schedule indicating a date and certain, as well as probably some intermittent dates mixed through the holidays. But I think it'll help everybody schedule accordingly. And I guess I'll ask, is there a reason why it was Mondays and Thursdays? Is there some precedent with that, or is there any concern over Mondays and Thursdays?
Township board meetings are Wednesdays. So we have Monday, we need a break between, then Wednesday's the meeting. Thursday, we don't have it on Friday. So it was kind of just like it spaced it out enough to give us time to read the material between, but yet didn't over bombard us to have 2 meetings on Wednesday or, right next to each other always. So it was just the best guess we had, trying to make it feasible for everybody. Nobody wants to meet on Fridays, so.
Right, that would be tough. Okay, makes sense, Melissa, thanks. Again, I was just trying to catch a little bit of the, I'll call it the cleanup with the exchange of emails. So under the 1C item that I have kind of just marching down the list, there had been
Greg?
a little bit of, yep.
Greg, may I ask, you started talking about the calendar and putting it together, but accommodating the holidays, there are a large number in this group. So will you be putting together the calendar to share based on the review of what's available dates on the Mondays and Thursdays, and then just providing that? You're not going to be able to meet everybody's needs, so those will be the dates, I would imagine, and then you'll adjust it for the holidays, provide a calendar, and as hopefully most people can attend the meetings, but not everybody will be able to. So if we can get that set so we can get it on our calendars and hold those times, that'd be great.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm driven pretty hard by a calendar. Even in these COVID days, it's pretty much a calendar-driven lifestyle, even without sports and such. So yeah, that's exactly what I thought we do, is make sure people have the opportunity to know in advance when we intend to get together. And again, we'll follow the Monday, Thursday until I would assume something's determined otherwise. Either we make good progress, we find ourselves falling behind, or we realize that there's some reason to adjust. So yeah, I'll work again with Melissa to get that out again.
And-
behooves
and
everybody to schedule it.
These meetings are being recorded. So if anyone does miss some, they have the, we're gonna work with Paul on how to find a way to post the link to watch it again. So we want to make sure that opportunity will be available to you to watch it. And actually talking about posting things, the township website has their little spot where we can put their documents, like links to it. If anyone has a hard time finding those links, please email me and I can try to, or call me and I can walk you through that. Because it is important that you take the time to review the documents. Some are more pertinent than others, but we're just trying, this is from a variety of people. And so we're trying to make sure people have the ability to read this. We're all reading the same material, and then we can take judgments from that. But if you have a problem finding that for some reason, just give me a call, email me, text me, whatever, and we can work that out, because I really think it's important. We all read our own facts and study for ourselves and not just listen to what each other is saying, but for real, learn it ourselves. So.
Can I ask a question, please, or make a request? Melissa and I talked about a township map that she felt was really very clear, about what the township looks like physically, and it's color coded, so you can kind of see, what's, I don't know if it's marked, if it's wetlands and if it's, but it's shoreland, it really designates, and I think that'll be important for us. I personally feel like looking at that as we're talking about size might be really helpful, rather than trying to, well, I don't know, I guess maybe our person in charge, Paul, could put something up for us, but sometimes it's helpful to have that. Is it possible, does the township have a color printer and we could each get a map? Is that, I don't know, it's 25 people. I don't know about cost.
I have a color printer.
It depending what you want, St. Louis County has different layers that you can access, from wetlands to, zoning classifications and that. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you want too much information, it gets very cluttered and not very detailed. So that can be a bit of a challenge to, provide enough clarity. You might want to go to St. Louis County website and pull up on planning and zoning, the Friedenberg mapping system. And you can get most of that on that site. So I'm not sure what the township has available. They'd probably have to go to St. Louis County website as well to pull that information. I don't know.
I know one time over 4 years ago, when I was buying my property, I looked at the residential, commercial, and industrial zoning that the St. Louis County records for the Friedenberg area.
Yeah.
And so I know that exists. I can't remember where it's at. I'm sure I can find it, but I think that's more important than wetlands. And the wetlands and stuff are going to be controlled by much higher power than Friedenberg as we go forth. That's something that local authorities really don't have a lot to do with in most jurisdictions that I've been with. So yeah, I think see where we're at with them, and maybe have a base of where we're going to go from there, or how we go about changing it if we're not happy.
Yeah, I think, Deb, what I'm hearing is the availability of color copies of things that are pertinent to get that level of distinction as a readily available reference. So, there's been already a lot of material shared. There'll be more. Some will probably become, referenceable information we're going to use on an ongoing basis. And maybe we can go back through the township and have copies printed for those of us that don't have color printers where it's important. To do it in advance would probably be a distribution issue, but to do it once we know there's some go-to documentation that people believe is important to have, a color version of it is probably, I would think, workable. So, but I'm hearing, some of the stuff is tough to continually pull back up on a screen. It's unlegible off of a black and white printer. So,
right.
Keep an eye
Melissa
on that.
Bell, do you have you seem like you're talented in that. I don't know you at all, but could you go in there and maybe give us a link to it, so when we're on these calls we can just link over and see a reference that sorry, I don't know everybody very well here, but that Deb was asking about, so you can have a visual. I know how that works well for myself even. So
Yep, this is Deb Polowitz, and I did see a map that Melissa had. That was a pretty good one, and we did get authorization to get copies printed. We can just turn in the receipt. So maybe we can get that
Good.
ready for all of us for the next meeting.
And maybe we could each pick it up at the township office or something. That would make it,
Well, they're not there. That's the problem.
Minuet, the Minuet.
Yeah, we could put them at the Minuet and everybody could go
Yeah.
pick them up there maybe.
Oh, yeah, yeah, true, landing zone.
Yep. So, Greg, I just wanted to bring something to everybody's attention that's on the application that we filled out. And I just want to say it because this is going to be recorded and that way it'll be official. We had asked for the phrase "other uses" under the description of the study committee to be taken out.
Remember that?
And it was missed for some reason.
Right.
So, just wanted on record that that is not supposed to be there. We're here for one reason and one reason only. So, just everybody be aware.
good point.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for sharing that, Deb. Yeah, I put that under 1C because again, as you're reinforcing, which I appreciate, it kind of got sent out in the email storm that got started. So I think it is important to get focused. I think that's going to be critical. So it's the first step that I noticed in light of the exchange prior to the call. So thanks for reinforcing that. The other thing, going back to the meeting, I did not see anything that was on duration based. I mean, was there an expectation of an hour or an hour and a half? Or because I really don't believe it's in our best interest to have, personally, to have meetings just run on. I mean, if we're going to have literally, constructive dialogue, I think we need some rules of engagement. We need an agenda. We need to make sure there's some level of pre-work. Even to your point, Deb, the things that we are going to possibly speak to is a great time to have that recirculated if it's not a very significant attachment, or put a link so that people kind of front of mind, so that, as we counter and digest more and more material, the pertinent for the conversation of the evening is resent in advance. That would be ideal, or at least that I think be preferential. So I'll go to Deb and Clay. Again, this was launched based on the application for service that you folks had worked on. Or to the group here, is an hour the right amount to keep us focused? Do people want to carve out more time than that? What was the mindset of the people that, and when they signed up for this opportunity?
This is Clay Sitch. I think meeting would be dictated on the time needed, because as farther we get into this, we may find the discussions to be longer than shorter, as all meetings are.
Mm-hmm.
So an hour is quite a long time, and so
Focused hour.
Yep, if we can get an agenda written down and
Correct.
follow the agenda and keep
Right.
the dialogue to what we're trying to do, I
Mhm.
think that would be
Helpful.
good. It might go as far as an hour and a half. I would hope not too many times, but if we could just kind of in our minds think it could go that long and try to stick to our purpose, then we'll probably get it done in a timely fashion.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Like 45-minute meetings, 5-minute phone calls. Otherwise, we don't know what we're talking. We don't know what we're talking about if we get on here without that.
I have a question. Greg. Back to Greg's comment about the calendar. Since we have Deb and Clay on the call, I know our deadline is April 1st, but yet we have to have this to the board, like how far in advance, Deb or Clay? Either one
I
of you.
would say by February.
Yep. Well, probably, we need to have it set by February. Our meeting will be in March. As a committee, our committee, if we feel real comfortable in having everything all set, February would be wonderful. But if we need to, no later than March, because that is the day. I don't have the calendar. I can go look over here. When our April 1st meeting, is that actually a Wednesday? Anybody have a calendar handy to see if April 1st is a Wednesday?
She's got a calendar.
April 1st, a Thursday.
Thursday, yeah.
Nice.
Okay, so then March 30th is when we have to present it to the board, no later than that, because
And that's
the
a board.
first it expires. So February would probably be our goal.
And you guys are gonna want to read it, you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing is that it would have to go down to the attorney also.
Yeah.
For them to review it and then get back to us with the final copy. And then it could be reviewed by the board.
Keeping in mind, there are 3 board members who are not present, so they're going to want some time to review and absorb it as well.
Mhm.
So then February, that takes away 2 months.
Yep.
Yeah, with holidays. So,
yeah,
but it's a good question, Lynn, because really that's why it was brought up earlier. We need to back up from it. So we just condensed it from April 1st to what, the last day of February, effectively.
Yeah.
We lost a month, but a month for good reason because it's going to go through a broader review. Okay, so we're talking the end of February. All right. Well, I'll get with Melissa. We'll see how many Mondays and Thursdays we have, and that may drive a little bit at how fast we move, because we don't know how long it's going to take, obviously. So we don't want to. It's not like we're following a proven path that we've all been down as a team. So it's not like we're replicating something that we've fine-tuned. Okay, but that's good. That's really important. Get us wrapped around the right calendar and pace. Anything else on the generals? Just.
Did we? Go ahead, Ed. I'm sorry.
No, I don't know if I raised my hand or how we should do it. But, my question is it been predetermined that we're going to be coming up with some sort of replacement or whatever you want to call it for the gravel pits that's greater than the counties? I mean, I'm still trying to get my head into what we're trying to do. And if we are looking at that, I know I asked the guy, Justin or Jason or whatever from ARDC, I know that the state says that the township and the county can have a coexistence as far as zoning goes, but they don't say that the county must accept it or anything. So, I guess I'm trying to figure out, are we really looking at forcing an issue with the county to accept that concept of shared zoning for one purpose?
2 things, just quickly. Paul got kicked off. He's our host. So if we all lose out, like get dropped, sign back in because his computer froze. So in case we all get deleted, that's why. Sorry, I had a quick say that before if we get deleted. So you can continue, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just, like I said, I'm just trying to get my head, hands around the whole thing of what we're trying to do. If it's already preconceived that we're going to have that zoning, then I need to know before we spend a ton of time whether the county is even going to play with us.
The county doesn't have a choice. Like you look at some of the ordinance, the land comprehensive use plan, there's a township section. They are required to listen to us. And we have the authority to take back zoning, and not like Keith Nelson said, but partial zoning. It's right in there, very clear.
No, I read the state part of it, and I just want to say the state allows for it, but it doesn't use the word must.
No. I'm talking about the county, not the ordinance. It's called the St. Louis County Land Comprehensive Plan. So it's St. Louis County's plan. And that actually has a township section to it. It's in there somewhere, those documents.
Yeah. Ed, the way, you're leading into the rest of the dialogue tonight, because I would imagine for as many people as we have on the call, we have different views of what are we trying to accomplish, because there's a little bit of ambiguity around that. And that's the place to start, and that's what we got to pin down so we can be effective, as we move forward. And that's why I did put that way I did under the second item that I forwarded, because there's a lot of literature, there's a lot of work that's been done, there's open questions around legalities and so forth that we may or may not on this call be sufficiently familiar or authority figure on. And even having Deb and Clay on, they're clearly as a township board pursuing some work with an attorney and the like. So, and this is where having them on is excellent, as well as the rest of us, since we'd have to, take on the labor. I drew from the application that we signed to be a part of this discussion. And that's what I reflected. And if we can use that as a basis to see if that gets to where we need to go or not. I'm drawing from it heavily. I'm not bringing in a lot of other peripheral information, but that's not to say that's the correct way to do it. But that does state, 4 things that are intended to be the basis of what we're considering as a study committee. And then it references a report that we provide to the township board, which we just talked about a calendar to achieve that. And there's been reference made to an ordinance or draft ordinance material and things of the nature. So I don't believe it's intended to be a foregone conclusion that we are going to find with the 4 items listed to be all on the exact same page, but that was what was asked of us. And what we produce as an end product depends on what we find. So I think that's the key thing. Are we interpreting the charter or the mission or the request that we signed up for the same? And if we are, then we can start putting together some structure around pursuing that.
So to say it another way, and from my perspective, nothing is predetermined. We have guidelines under what is described in the information provided through the township. If you read that information, it talks about review and reporting. It doesn't say what the actual outcome will be in our recommendations to the board. So that's yet to be determined.
Correct. I mean, we have a cross-section of people that have signed up, and probably left, right, and in the middle of the issue. And that should be create a healthy discussion, maybe a little bit spirited, but if we base it on, again, reference material, precedent, and other stuff that we pull together, I think, we're going to do justice to the effort. If you just look at what I put under 2A, and I have Romanet 1 and Romanet 2, and these 4 things are drawn directly from the application. So Deb or Clay, if we're not supposed to draw heavily from that as a basis of our effort, then please weigh in. But, the first thing we can read it there, whether the existing regulations within the county ordinance are sufficient to protect the interests of the township. So that is a request of us to look into. And, my comment there is we're obviously assembled on the heels of the survey. So it's already been effectively predetermined that we need to look at this. That's the basis of what we're doing. And we're either going to find out that case is believed to be true, that they are sufficient, or they aren't. And so there's going to be effort to come to that conclusion. But I would think we would focus dialogue under that ask of us. And again, the outcome of the group's discussions and so forth will dictate. If they're assumed to be sufficient, then I think there's going to be some level of recommendations or reporting. If they're assumed to be insufficient, then that's presumptive that we are looking much more closely at taking this back within the township. And that's where you get into probably providing things that would look like input to or draft text that might be considered by the town board or the town board's attorney for the development ordinance.
Correct. That's my agreement.
Well,
Again, I'm
where
drawing
I
from what
come back, and I would just ask that somebody talk to the county to make sure that they will accept it. If that, and I personally believe that that's going to be the outcome of this, is that we're going to try and do something as far as shared zoning. And I just don't want to spend a lot of time like we did with the comprehensive plan, only to have the county say, thank you very much, we don't want it. So
Ed, it's a great question, because we want to be motivated that our work is going to be meaningful. So I would refer that to Deb and to Clay, and if need be, back to the township board meeting as to do we have an interpretation, or do we have an understanding along those lines that the work being done, if it comes beyond the survey, which already proved that there's a concern, and beyond the effort that we're going to look at recommendations that might mean a willingness to take back on zoning, is that going to, for this particular issue, is that going to be accepted by the county, or are they going to take a stance in contrast to that? Clay or Deb?
Deb, this is Clay. And my understanding is that it's, once we take that we were only looking at taking over zoning for extraction pits in the town. And that was it. So, and we can do that after much conversation with many attorneys and both the Minnesota Association of Township and our current attorney. That is possible, and we do not need the approval of the county. Then it's our responsibility. And that's been actually said by Mr. Nelson that, but he wants us to take over everything, which is not necessary. And that was one of my questions very early on in March with Steve Fensky, the Minnesota Association of Townships attorney. And he was the one that told me exactly how this worked. And we do not have to take over all zoning. We can take over part of the zoning.
I guess, again, and I don't want to get, buried in the minutia of it. I asked the ARDC guy, go back to the county, ask them how many townships have been successful in a shared zoning thing.
We're only zoning gravel pits.
I know that's a shared zoning for gravel pits.
No,
anybody.
Ed, and towers aren't the same as gravel pits because they're not as old. But since about the mid-90s, I have helped write zoning rules for towers just so townships can manage them. Because the argument there is the county isn't seeing them from anywhere in their house where they're ruling from, and the township is. So we've been very successful at that in multiple different states of handing just tower zoning to the townships at certain points.
Okay, I mean, like I said,
with the growing,
I just want to make sure that we're not spending a lot of time only to find out that they hand it back to us and say, thank you very much. You do all of it or you do none of it, like Keith said.
Nope.
And I realize that the state says you can do this concept of a shared zoning for one issue or multiple issues. But the county could sit there and turn around and say, we don't want to play with you like that. Either you take over all zoning or we take over all zoning. Because a state statement is very ambiguous. It just says this can be done. It doesn't mean it has to be done by the county. So I just wanted to be sure that was clarified. Which
I think the more ambiguous it is, the better it is for us.
Well, not really.
Ed, have you taken time to read that land comprehensive plan under the township section? Have you read that yet?
Yep.
So that's actually the county's document. You don't think they're going to follow through with what they say in their document?
I question it because the reason I say that, if you take a look, Kenosha has gone through this. They gave back zoning in 2018. And a lady by the name of Barb Hayden and another one by the name of, I have it here someplace, Mary Anderson, both from the county, explained that they are doing something with Solway and Kenosha that I think would be something we should be looking at, where they do an overlay, with what the township wants without taking the whole thing back. So I just want to find out if anybody's looked into the way Kenosha and Solway are working with the county on it, because they've just been through this.
I just spoke with a gentleman from Solway today, and they're working the only thing that they're not doing anything with the county. They're not doing any zoning with the county. The county is doing all the zoning for them.
That's the way Kenosha is as well.
That's correct. But not all townships are like that in the state of Minnesota.
I would continue the meeting and say, please follow the format. Identify
Okay, hey Ed, I'll jump in. Good question. I mean, real good question. Again, we want to be working on something that has meaning, is going to be put to use on the heels of our efforts. I think what might be interesting, again, maybe some of the stuff has to be just taken offline just to be practical, and then followed up. But you know, the calendar we talked about, I'd be interested in extending beyond the time that we're putting into this as to how the next steps are intended, taken on by the township, just so we kind of know that there's a our output is input to another process, and if that process is to pursue, you know, an ordinance or not, and if it is for the singular issue we're talking about, then that's what we're trying to support, is the investigative effort as to which direction we believe this should go, and provide you know, background accordingly.
This is Deb, and that is correct. And one of the ways or one of the things we have to keep in mind is whatever we come up with, it has to be as strict or stricter than what St. Louis County has. We can't make ours lesser.
Right.
And I believe that's where a lot of the townships may come into some trouble. So as long as we do as well or better, then we'll be doing well with the
Right.
county.
I read that too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be an interesting undertaking for sure, because we find out how objective or subjective their criteria is. Okay, so again, just to kind of march through it a little bit, provide a little bit of framework. So discussion around, you know, we are looking at whether there's sufficient protections or not. That's the basis of what we're looking at as far as interests that meet the township's needs, if not by the county. So that's going to be a yay or nay. Again, I believe the way I interpret the application is, if we believe they are, then we will just provide a report that has some level of background. If we believe that they are not, then we're going to be much more specific, much to what Deb just said, trying to call out some of these things that should be additive or considered, and that would be input to the township's consideration to create an ordinance. So we're likely on the same page there, at least as we kind of talked through here. The second item that was listed on the application was the state statutes and rules. And in reality, that is a matter of getting all of us at the same level of familiarity. So there has been some initial information submitted. I'm wondering if anybody on the call has gone to the point of being somewhat proficient with this information and could provide a critique of what's been posted already versus what information we would likely need to review in order to be collectively current on that. Who's our statutes and rules, state statutes, most knowledgeable party on the call that's been investing time looking into that? Anybody wants to proclaim that level of familiarity?
State statutes.
I won't take ownership for it, but I have tried to look up and find what I can about, you know, cups, which being conditional use permits, and extractive use. And I've done my best finding them. They're very vague for the state. But they are posted on the document page to review for everybody to look at. But again, very, very vague for the state by far. I mean, the thing about a cup is, I think, just like a paragraph long, nothing really, and even extractive use was very vague. So, but again, if you guys find more, please put it on there. We really, you know, I'm doing my best to find information to share with everybody. But if you have something like Ed, you seem to have a lot of documents, give them to the clerks to put on, because then we can all look at it together. But from what I found from the state, it seemed to be very vague. That was my thought on it all. So
that strikes me as something you might want to be explicitly reviewing. Sounds like there might be limited information, which, you know, brevity allows us the opportunity probably to look through it. And then I think it is one of the fundamental things that we need to make sure we haven't overlooked information. So maybe that's going to be on a future agenda, just what is specifically out there, and make sure that there's going to be certain things almost mandatory reading. Otherwise, we're going to be on a different page versus ancillary documents that might be enlightening, but may or may not really have a lot of bearing. So I think the statutes is a heavy source to make sure we're current on.
If I can make a comment about, you know, as we're progressing through this and you're talking about obtaining further understanding and clarification areas, it'll be helpful. I think we talked earlier about efficient meetings, if we can get that information well in advance, so we're not discussing it, reading it, sharing it as part of the timeline that we're working through each of the meetings. So as best as possible, if we're given the charge to pursue and provide information, if we can get it all in advance, we can review it and be prepared for discussion, and it'll save time in our meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that, Mark.
Yeah, and Mark, the documents are on the township website.
Right.
So as we're getting them, hopefully we're putting them up there. So during the meeting, they've already been reviewed by people. So.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the second of 4. Again, just progressing on. Again, drawing directly from the application. Says steps taken and the regulations adopted by other communities to avoid and reduce the potential negative impacts of extractive use in their neighborhoods, neighborhood properties, public infrastructure, and other uses, and so forth. There again, I think that's going to be a pretty fundamental piece of information that we want to make sure we have everybody review. And to your point, Mark, we push back out if we're going to put it on agenda to cover. And again, I know Melissa has had a couple on the information she posted, but there may be others. So it's one of the 4 areas we're being asked to look at. I think it's probably one of the most interesting reads because we'll look for or may see considerations that were given that help us better understand what we want to take into account as well. So that's the second or third. And then last thing, just to round out the 4 items, whether, and just take it directly from it, whether the township should impose regulations or extraction use that are stricter than those imposed by the county ordinance to better protect the town and its residents. And to Deb's comment, that's the only direction we can go if we find that to be the most prudent is stricter. And I see that as really the deliverable. Again, either we're providing comments in a report form that are just a summary to close out the effort, or we're putting some hard information into a drafted ordinance type framework that is intended to be used and taken as input of this group's efforts. And those are the 2 things I reflect under D, Romanet 1 and Romanet 2. Again, I'm not trying to superimpose my interpretation on everybody else, but that seems to be the path 1 through 3 to get there. The last one seems to be the deliverable in one form or another.
This is Deb again, Greg, and I just want to interject. Conditional use permit, that's what the county gives for anyone that wants to do a certain use on a property. And if I would like everybody to read up and actually know what a conditional use permit is, what is entailed. There's conditions that are imposed on permits, and they should be knowledgeable of what these conditions are supposed to be and how they are to be followed. I think that's important because if we are studying conditional use permits and zoning and what we want to do, I think everybody needs to know exactly what one of those is. So if they could study up on that a little bit, that would be great.
I have a question. Does anybody know if Friedenberg takes over, if our township takes over the zoning for land extractions, just the gravel pits, does one person, do you still have to file the county cup? Yes. I see people shaking their heads. Yes, maybe. You may know that.
I don't believe you have to file. No, I'm not 100%, but from what I've read, if we are in control of it, everything comes through us, but we still would have to register it through the county, I think.
You have to record it. You have to record it with the CP and the landowner, the township, or the jurisdiction that approved it, and then send it to the county.
So it goes to the
Or
township first.
even sometimes the state, if you're working on BLM land or whatever. if
Thanks,
you use
Darren.
Conditional use on that.
Right.
Then keep in mind, when people fail on a conditional use permit, if it's turned down with a conditional use permit, usually we always start our special use permit the same time we start a conditional use permit. in case it would fail when we apply. So that'd be another thing to read up on and have some
Special use grant.
have some knowledge on too.
So then it goes to the township first. Right, and then to the county. Okay, good to know.
And there's going to be any approval with the county. It should just be probably sent to the recorder's office with maybe a note in their meetings or something.
So all of the fees, because I mean, I've read through the cup, obviously. There's like a bunch of fees. Todd knows this, Dan knows this. So the fees will be structured by Friedenberg Township versus the county. So you're not paying double.
Correct.
Well, let's verify that with the count or like our lawyer or the township before we say yes for sure. Because that's a big answer to answer right off. for
Okay.
sure.
We may collect it. I think it might get rifled right back to the county, the money.
Okay.
On those last two comments, just everybody so willingly voted me into chair. Deb and then Darren both commented on having some insight. I think my approach would be for areas that people do have advanced knowledge in comparison to the rest of the team. I'll just pick on Darren on the special use. Might look to assign them to speak to it when we get back together, because that way they can help facilitate conversations with some familiarity with the subject matter.
Right.
So hopefully everybody, we become most efficient and proficient if we do that. So heads up, if you know something about a particular area we need to cover, I think it's logical we lean on the person to lead that and give them the forewarning to be able to do that on a subsequent call. Okay, so again, we're coming on the hour. We're trying to get some basic stuff put together. Quite frankly, the schedule already dictates we get together Thursday, presumptively Thursday, which is right around the corner. This is a big step if we don't open it up to people having a different interpretation, because again, I'm drawing strictly from the application for service. There is so much else that's been looked at. I know other people have spoken amongst themselves, or I've heard comments or been involved in dialogue about other aspects of this large open discussion here in the township. But is everybody at peace as to what we really are trying to focus on, or are we missing something within the scope of this that we need to talk about here to cover up front before we start putting some constraints on what we spend time on?
Okay, do I have the floor? This
Hi,
Dan
Dan.
Swarsel.
Hi.
Hey.
Yes, Dan.
I guess my question is everything that we are doing here, does the county facilitate this as well? And basically they have land use, they have permitting, they have, all of the things in place already. Maybe we should try to change the county law. And I presented this to Keith Nelson, and he said, no. He says, whatever the county does for one township, they have to do for all the townships, because they're kind of like the mothership. I don't know if that's a good explanation. So anyways, I guess my question is what can we do that is better than what the county does?
Well, I think looking at some of the history of Friedenberg and how cups have been dealt in the past and how they've been enforced in the past or not enforced in the past is very important. If you look at the documents, 7 and 8 have a lot of history on Friedenberg cups and how what the county's done with them, and so I think it's good for each person to review for themselves and see, has the county been due diligent and followed their own guidelines, or do they not? Because also, reading it, when the application came through, it was very subjective. So you could say, well, it actually kind of could say that thing, so I think part of this is to make clearer guidelines, which is what the ordinance hopefully would do. But I think it's up to us to read the county ordinance and also some of the history of Friedenberg that it affects us, and then why we want to do this, because if the county's done a great job, then why would we want to do that? But if the county has been failing us, then that's why we really want to look at that. And that's, I think, why we want to move forward. So again, tabs 7 and 8 in that document form would be most helpful.
Okay, so as we go along with this, we can design we can design how we want our township to look later on, 20 years down the road, 50 years down the road, 100 years down the road, long after we're gone. These people are going to come back to this and they're going to say, why did they do it this way? Okay. Basically what I'm saying, if we take this over, if we take gravel pits over, we're going to need somebody to go into every one of these pits and to tell these landowners to turn around and doze their holes shut when they're not using them. Then we would not have the problem of these steep banks. We wouldn't have the problems that they've neglected to keep up on, these pit owners, all of them. Okay, that's the biggest threat of these pits is if somebody wanders in and gets hurt. Okay, so they put up no trespassing signs around, and their insurance companies have all told them, keep people out at any expense. Well, by doing that, by keeping people out of these pits, no public eye on what really is going on back there, they pretty much can do just about whatever they want behind a no trespassing sign. So basically, when we take this over, we're going to have some sort of enforcement of this, and we're going to have some way, if nothing else, hire somebody with a dozer to go in there and close these pits and doze these banks down for them if they won't do it for themselves, I guess.
Hey, Dan, let me jump in again. I want to be sensitive. We talked about an hour to hour and a half. So, I imagine everybody's on board till 8 likely. Broad issue, talking about enforcement and other things, which I believe there may be, space, so to speak, within an ordinance draft if we get to that point where we say, I think what you're kind of alluding to is maybe the county isn't doing such a good job, and if we step up to a stiffer standard or enforcement of standards as they currently exist, we're going to get involved in a level of effort locally that needs to be taken into consideration. That may be very true. It's too early to tell where this stuff fits necessarily, but I'm thinking, again, this team is trying to focus, that's our discussions today, on a limited scope to be able to do a thorough job. And I don't see anything within the application that talks about us concerning ourselves with enforcement and things that are kind of downstream of whether we need more strict guidelines or not, and if so, how do we detail those out in comparison to what the county currently uses as a basis to approve conditional use permits?
Greg,
I would go ahead.
Oh, sorry. If you look at the Gnesen plan, so part of the ordinance is building a planning commission. That if we build the ordinance, we have to have a planning commission. They go hand in hand. And if you look at the Gnesen plan, they have a zoning officer. I think it can be a paid position. So it's a board of let's say 5 people. Don't quote me on these things. I'm just it's a board. And one of the board members would be the zoning officer, who would have knowledge and whatnot. He or she would be the main person that would be going in for the inspections with 2 other people from the planning, commission and looking at these things. So it is what Dan's referring to. It is part of our thing, the enforcement part, because that's the planning commission. If you look at the Gnesen plan, which the Gnesen plan the township has talked about is most similar because they're our neighbors. And so that's probably our closest goal of what we'd be, if we choose, what we'd be mimicking. So there is a part of enforcement. And again, I've just read up a little bit on it. I don't know exactly, but they did talk about the zoning officer. And so there are things that would be part of the ordinance that we'd be building that would deal with that kind of stuff. So just to think about those things.
Well,
But zoning doesn't enforce anything. They just document it and they send it into the county. The county's got plenty of enforcement out there to serve something to somebody. These gravel pits now can easily be monitored by a drone for measurements of how much is extracted every week and month or whatever. So, I mean, I think that is something that the planning commission will have to set up, and there's companies that do that. It's nothing that we'd have anybody here I mean, I don't know a lot of you, but it's hard to find qualifications to do that with a tape measure and a stick and stuff. Nowadays, you just fly a drone over it and it'd be done in a couple hours and a couple $1,000 bill to some environmental company.
and am I not correct that now there's supposed to be, when you get a cup, you are supposed to have a reclamation plan? You're supposed to file a reclamation plan with that application so that these pits aren't left just open and not just bulldozed, but they are supposed to provide the county talked about that, at least when we were up at the hearing.
You're correct.
Yes, you have to reclaim your pits. You have to reseed them with natural grasses. You have to put down at least 6 inches of topsoil. The whole thing that I'm asking is, how are we going to enforce this ordinance also, I guess? I know we're only here to give our advice, but yeah, you can turn around and ask the sheriff to go and enforce this. Why didn't the county do this already? Why hasn't the county already enforced their cups that they have? What I'm reading here, there's 11 pits within 1.5 miles, 2 miles of this spot that they're going to open up for another pit that are depleted or not being used or whatever. Why do they have to open another pit is the question. And the pit that they're opening is because the material there is what they need. These other pits don't have that type of material in a lot of ways. So as long as these pits don't have that type of material, why are they still open if they can't get anything usable out of them?
I think some of the subject matter we're discussing now will come up later, depending on the path that we go down as this thing progresses. And so we're getting to probably a higher level of detail that we need to right now, but it'll be discussed. So I think, Greg, I don't know if you want to continue on down what's left.
Well, I think, yeah, appreciate you sharing that, Mark, and Dan as well. Yeah, I mean, if we going back, go back to the beginning of it, we don't know if we're doing a report, which could clearly say that there needs to be county enforcement of existing ordinance-related guidelines that could be in a report, or we may end up having an ordinance format that details out more relative to that subject. But I think it's one of the components. But Dan, I think I'm sensing it deals with how is the county going to, the township potentially manage this. Again, I don't see us talking in detail about that, but it sounds like it needs to be part of it. It's been in some of the others. So I think the subject matter.
Greg.
Yes, Dan.
The paperwork, no more pits in Friedenberg. Basically, it goes over how the county ramrodded this through and how, it wasn't right for the people around the area, that they didn't get a chance before this was pushed through. Nobody's voices got heard. So basically that's why we're here at this meeting right now, because they all went to the town board and said, hey, they're not listening to us. And, so now we are here to make the decision for the county, sort of.
No. We don't have that level of authority. Again, we're going back to what I thought we had, at least I had drawn from aired here is we're being asked for the township to look after at least the 4 dimensions reflected in the application. And end goal is a report with recommendations, or if we believe that the county is not serving our best interest, probably something that's a little bit more specific and paralleling what might be a ordinance format that we've drawn from by a neighboring township that may have already taken some similar steps. Again, I wanted to get it. I'm wired to get into a deliverable, and we don't know what that deliverable is yet, and that's part of the openness of our discussion, because we have a mixed perspective here on the call, which is healthy. The only other thing I would share in light of what I've been through is that the application precedes the CUP, and the CUP and the basis by which the township did review is correlated to their interpretation of it. They had 4 dimensions. Only one was objective from my take. 3 others were subjective. So I think there is room for more detail around our discussions. And again, whether we believe that that's going to be sufficient or is material enough to change the way Friedenberg looks at the issuance of permits, we may find out that's not the case, that we really don't see enough material differences that are, in fact, objective, that we could drive a higher standard that will look after our best interests. So I don't think we're there yet, but there's a lot of ground to be covered, no doubt, and hopefully I can help facilitate that, and everybody else taking ownership as well, particularly based on areas of knowledge or interest.
Dan, Dan, this is Deb. I would just like to interject. I have talked to Ganesan extensively about their gravel pits over there, and
I lived there for 25 years. Yes.
Okay, so you should know a long time ago, there was problems with their pits over there. And when they took over their zoning, they worked with the pit operators, and now everything is great. They are doing very well, doing their own zoning with their pits. They wouldn't change a thing, they told me. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We just have to work on it to get there.
Right, and we should look at our neighboring townships and see what they've done. Grand Lake is on one side of me here, and Ganesan is on the other side of me. We've got unorganized to the north, and our township to the south of us, Kenosha, has given their rights back to the county as far as zoning. So basically, we have Grand Lake to look at. Where is their zoning at? And we have Ganesan to look at, because there are neighboring communities. And basically, our neighboring communities do business with our pits. And we here, our community people, do business with their pits. You see what I'm saying? It's all intertwined. So our ruling should be close to what Ganesan's is if we decide to take over this and do it then. Right?
Could very well be, Dan. I mean, plagiarism is the ultimate compliment. And if they've done, as we should definitely be looking at, a good job detailing more closely, and we find our interests are similar, and what Deb said was pretty powerful, that they're actually having a positive experience with that responsibility, then great. A blueprint that we can follow to help us make sure we cover the bases. If that's in fact, where we find ourselves going, could be very helpful. So whether it's Grand Lake, as you shared, Ganesan or otherwise, I think that's a quicker path to the end, or at least, it leads us down a path we can follow that other people have already gone through.
Well, it's
so
what
that would be
neighboring
excellent.
communities have done. Or
Great, yeah.
haven't done. Right.
Right. I agree. I completely agree.
Maybe with that discussion being said, maybe we're missing some people here that should be involved. The people that profit from these pits. I've profited from towers my entire life. And when people have a problem not having the right zoning, I will go in and make it as fair to the, for us as tower builders to still make a profit from it. But usually, like you're saying, Dan, it's just copied from another township, or it's started out with another township and then just proceeded to go. None of us are going to get rich on making this zoning thing happen. There are people out there in the industry, and if they truly care about their industry, they'll contribute, it'll be slanted their way, but we'll just have to see that. And then have them put some energy, effort and time into some of this too. Instead of us all doing all the legwork, and turn it back onto the people that are making the profit, or at least get their insight. And if you want to do business with the gravel pits in the township, you got to do it as fairly as you do in the neighboring townships. You need to do it as, you know, as clean or whatever in it. And
Right, right. It should be
monitoring.
fair to the contractors in this neighborhood, and it should be fair to the contractors of the other neighborhoods surrounding us that come into this neighborhood and do work.
There are several gravel pit operators on this committee.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Good.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cross section, but I think there's a lot of residents that are not in the business that are also on the call. Well, you know, I'll make a closing comment and then leave it open to the rest that might have comments. We'll look to wrap up by 8 to keep to a 90-minute time frame tonight. So my ask is that to the extent there's a subject that you believe categorically we need to cover and some sense of the sequence within the conversations, I'd appreciate you sending that as another means of input to planning forward on what we're gonna cover on next few calls. So, you know, email works fine. I can take one email from everybody if that's what it amounts to or not. But if in the next 24 hours, you would indicate categories that you believe we need to cover and some level of sequence, you know, early, mid, late, so that we stage them properly. I'll use that input in addition to what I'm receiving on the fly or doing myself or in conversations with others. But again, everybody could therefore weigh in on how they like to see this thing handled a little bit, and we'll start setting up structure to do that. And then likely, as I mentioned, for those that have expertise, we'll look to lean on them to facilitate those calls. So subject matter, areas of expertise you'd like to facilitate or could, and relative sequence, that's a starting point to frame how much we have to cover and how we're going to go about doing that. So that's my ask of the group here. So I look forward to that input to the extent people do that.
Question. Melissa, since you're the secretary, I know. Are you going to send out like a recap of what Greg is saying? And that would, you know, like kind of, or Greg, are you going to? No? Or do we have to take like extensive notes right here? Because I certainly am not a secretary.
Why don't we do this? It's a good comment, Lynn. I'm going to let Marissa decide how she wants to gather. I know even the township had asked for information to be shared, but if it's being recorded, I'm not, you know, I'm not sure how much she wants to gather, right? But it's a good mention, Lynn. I'll check with Melissa here in the next 24 hours. We'll get out the schedule because that will be pretty straightforward, and ask prior to the other call, next call. And again, that input would be used to try to group that input from everybody, group it into here appears to be the subject matter within reason. Here's a loose grouping. Here's where we are trying to work through discussions, and that'll give us a little bit of structure for conversation on Thursday.
Perfect.
I'll work with Melissa on that.
For those of us who don't have particular expertise for how we want something formatted or started with, are there some specific assignments that maybe we might be able to get involved in and do something by our next meeting?
Good ask, Bonnie. I actually thought about, what level of assignment any and all of us would take on, not knowing how this would go. I think it might be tough. Thursday is so, it's right. It's going to be honest in a matter of a couple of days. But I do think Thursday's meeting could entail some people taking action items in order to somewhat specialize or focus on something that we all think needs to be covered thoroughly. And maybe there's 2 or 3 people that have a strong interest. So I think if we just assemble what the loose makings of how we're going to try to facilitate this with reference to subject matter between now and Thursday and a calendar, I think that's probably sufficient. But I think on the heels of that, we do want to have people take some ownership so we all work collaboratively. Your thoughts, other thoughts?
I just have another question. Speaking to Deb and Clay again, since you guys are on the board, is the board going to be, does this have, since I'm an accountant, obviously my brain goes right toward dollar signs. Does this have anything to do with money impact? Our study, as far as,
Well, you can finish your sentence and I'll tell you what my lead is on.
I was just, my sentence is gone. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. My opinion is what I see and one of my driving forces is the township is spending quite a bit of money trying to get the county to do what the county says they're going to do, and they just don't. And in my opinion, there's several faults that the county has, and it does cost our township money. And at the end of the day, it would be really nice if it didn't. So yes, there is a little bit of financial burden, but it is not driven by our township. It's driven from the county not following through.
Right.
I don't know, does that, we're not going to be making any money, like the township isn't going to be making any money taking this over, that's for sure.
Well,
Is that what you're thinking?
It kind of will be, because if we're not filing a cup with the county, we're collecting all those fines, but the fees, the permitting fees.
Right.
Township will be collecting that money, correct? And on the other hand, we're going to need to come up with how they're going to facilitate paying for planning board supervise, that thing, the whole planning.
Well, that'll be down the road, but as far as driving this committee, it's not a financial driven.
No, not our committee, but I mean, so, okay, never mind. Go ahead. Confused.
Anybody else that's on the call here? Close out the hour.
I think once me and you get the agenda done, I want to try to post it on the township website. It might just have to be a link. I know the secretaries don't want to put documents on. They want everything to be via links. But I'll try to get like one of the things to have for agendas. So you can go, because like sometimes the emails we send out get lost in the next email, and so they're hard to find. So I will try to get the agenda out on the website. So if you can't find it on the emails we send out, you'll have it on the website available. And then also Paul, I think his computer did die, but the Zoom he made for us, that Zoom link that's there is our permanent Zoom link. So you don't have to worry about getting another code or anything else. We'll use the same one every time. So just so you guys know that, that's good. I think he did a really good job. I'm super impressed. So don't worry about finding that Zoom code. It'll be in the same spot you found it last time, right in the township website, again, that link. So hopefully that will be good for everybody.
Sounds good. Anybody else?
Move to adjourn.
Okay. Everyone's going twice. Okay, good. So, all right. So Melissa and I'll hook up. We'll get the agenda rolling. We'll get an ask out there to the team as in for Thursday's call. We'll create an agenda for Thursday's call. Likely we'll have some assignments and maybe even have some areas to specifically talk about on Thursday. And we're going to keep it within an hour and a half max is what I'm hearing. So if everybody's good with all that, let's run this process and collaborate till we get to the end in order to fulfill our obligation under this application service.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Okay.
Greg.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.